How you doing today? My name is Robert Lopez, and I'm coming to you from my studio, the Silver Saloon. And I'm just going to do a quick demo on my new riveting system. I call it the Stinger riveting system, and this is it here. I make these myself, and the reason why I actually came up with this was I do a lot of riveting, and a lot of riveting on cuffs. So I use titanium on a lot of my cuffs, most of my cuffs, and I add silver to the top of it. And I'm sure, as most of you know, that you can't actually solder to titanium. So I have to rivet all of my top components to the titanium. And in the past, when I was making these cuffs, I would have to rivet them without my system, and it was a real pain in the butt. To get these inside rivets, nice and clean. I would do it the old way with a hammer, and I would put them on a bracelet mandrel, and I would rivet them, and they don't make a very clean. Doesn't make a very clean head. And before I was using a mandrel, I wasn't very smart about it, and what I would do is I would rivet one side. I'd put it on a steel block, and I'd try to rivet the inside of it. But you hit the cuff, so you can't really get to the rivets to hammer them very well. I was able to do it. I was able to get inside of them and do somewhat of a rivet head so they would lock in place, but they'd be very raw and rough and sharp. And then I'd have to go inside, and I would have to take a flex shaft, and I have to clean up the inside of the rivet heads so they weren't sharp on your wrists. So then I moved to the mandrel. Just that was dumb of me not to think of that earlier, but so I would use the mandrel, and I would slip the rivet inside, and I'd place it on the mandrel, and then I'd proceed to rivet the outside of it. Boom, 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 boom. And that was okay for a while, but again, it would make a real rough head on the outside and the inside. The inside would, after being flattened out, it would cause a sharp edge, and I'd have to go inside there and try to buff it out and clean it out. And I like the color on the inside of my cuffs to stay, because I heat treat these to get a color patina on them. And when in the process of cleaning up those rivet heads to make them so they're smooth, I would take off that color. So I'd have to go inside and buff the whole thing out, and I never really got them. I'd try, and they would still be sharp. I'd buff the heck out of them. They would still have some sort of sharpness to them. So as I started teaching people how to make these cuffs, I had to come up with a way to easily instruct people how to set a rivet in the classroom. I'm teaching sometimes 15 people, so to bring that many bracelet mandrels and riveting hammers and flex shafts to buff it out, it was not a good way to do it. It wasn't fast. It wasn't efficient. So I developed this system, and it came about just for teaching purposes, so to make my life easier on the road teaching. So then I made a first one, and it was very rudimentary. It was real quick and down and dirty. I just kind of got it done so I could take it to one of my classes and teach, and people really seemed to like it. So people were asking me to make more of them and sell to them. So I came up with this system, which is it's a lot cleaner. It mounts to a workbench. I have it mounted right here. When I travel, I put it onto a traveling workbench, and it works very, very nice. So here's the second part of it. And what I use is an automatic center punch, and it just punch, and then you end up having two very clean heads, domed heads on the inside and the outside of the cuff. And the reason why I developed it to have this curve in it here is when you're doing a cuff, it allows you to get inside the cuff and actually rivet inside that curve. Also, I'm sure most of you know that when you rivet a cuff, some of you may want to rivet it flat. You may ask, why don't I do it flat and not have that bend in the riveting system? Well, if you were to take a piece of flat titanium and then laid a piece of flat silver over it, and you riveted it all flat, and then you were to shape it after, what's going to happen is the inside cuff is actually going to move more, and the outer one, especially if it's a thicker diameter, will move less. And those holes, when you rivet it, it's gonna shift, and one will move more than the other, and that hole will want to shift. and what will happen is you actually shear off the rivet. You'll cut it. So I always do mine bent. I shape the cuff, I shape all the components, I slip them over each other, and then I rivet it. That way I'm not shearing off the rivets. So what I like to use for my rivet heads is 16 gauge round wire. I buy a spool of 16 gauge round wire, and I will cut little pieces off. And these guys are, I just kind of guess, I don't really measure them too much. They're I want to say 3/8 long. You can make them a little longer if you like. If you want to, you'll see as I demo this. They make them a little bit easier to hold, and because we have to file them after. So that's the gauge that I use, 16 gauge. And then when I drill my holes for the rivets to go through the pieces, I like the hole must be very snug. You don't want any slack in that hole when you put the rivet in. If the rivet's not snug in the hole, it'll actually shift a little bit on you, and if it shifts to one side and you go to rivet it, it'll actually bend over before the head starts to actually form, and you don't want that to happen. So you want a real nice snug hole for the rivet to go into. The drill bits that I like to use are these little guys here. They're made by Bush, and I get them from Rio Grande. They are tungsten vanadium twist drill bits made by Bush, and the size that you want to get is 1.3 millimeter. For the 16 gauge. Now if you decide to use, say, an 18 gauge, I used to use 18 gauge wire for a long time. I moved up to 16, I just think it's a stronger rivet. You can use 18 gauge, just make sure you get a corresponding drill bit for it. I think the drill bits I used to use were number 60 from Rio Grande. The item number on this twist drill bit, if you wish to buy it, is, let's see, 341576. Again, item number 341576, and that's a tungsten vanadium drill bit made by Bush. They come in a 6-pack. You can get you can get 6 for $10.40. And I really like these bits. They seem to last a really long time. I was using the other drill bits, I think they were titanium cobalt coated or something like that. The number 60 drill bits, and those I seem to burn through those quite fast, drilling through titanium. So these tungsten vanadium ones really last long when you're drilling through titanium. Now again, you don't have to use it with titanium. The system that I'm using here, it works, copper, brass, bronze, gold, silver, and any of those in conjunction with each other. I do a few other things. I like this piece here. This is a pendant. This piece here was actually riveted. This is a bronze metal clay piece up on top, and I didn't want to I bought this piece from somebody and it already had its verdigris on it, this green patina, and I didn't want to solder it on. I probably could have soldered it, but I didn't want to lose the verdigris, so I riveted onto the silver components. So it's just an example of what you can do. Here's a piece that I actually riveted through some elkhorn. I have this top cap, and I put a rivet through it and riveted on. Boom, right there. And then here's some other examples of cuffs that I made with my riveting system. These are all silver and titanium, so the silver is overlaid over the titanium and riveted on. So I'll do a quick demo of how I do these. Now I'll demo the riveting system first, and then I'll do a quick demo on the rivet heads if you want to make your own. So first off, I have a piece of titanium here. This is a real quick piece. I'm just going to demo it. It's not really a finished piece. It's just something to show you how I do this. And then I'll try to move the camera a little closer so you can get a better view of what I'm doing. All right. So here's the cuff that I'm going to rivet together. It's just a piece of titanium and copper. It's just an example piece, so I'm just going to show you quickly how fast this system works. First off, what I do is I take the top piece that I'm actually going to be riveting. I'm going to mark the areas where I'm going to be riveting. So I'll just do the 4 corners. Just put a little mark there. Sometimes I usually don't even mark these. I just kind of just punch them. All right. So now that I have the marks where I'm going to be riveting these 4 corners, I'll take a regular center punch. This is the center punch with a point on it. Hasn't been adapted at all. I'll put it on a steel block, and I'll just go ahead and punch those areas. Slightly warped the copper. The copper is very thin gauge. I just grabbed a piece real quick. I'm going to reshape it. Now you can punch this on the mandrel. That's probably what I should have done. So you don't lose your shape. You can just take it and just punch it, boom, and that'll hold that'll actually hold the shape better. Just boom. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go drill all 4 of these out on my drill press. You can use a flex shaft. I recommend it's just, if you use a flex shaft, try not to rock the shaft at all. Make it go straight down, otherwise you can snap the bit. But I have a drill press. I'm gonna drill press it real quick. Drill all 4 holes again with my 1.3 millimeter drill bit, and then I'll just kind of drill them out real quick, and then I'll slightly ream them. I'll put them through the drill bit through it and just kind of ream it out. It's a little snug, especially when you go through multiple layers. If you're doing like 2, 3, 4 pieces that you're going through, you really want to ream that hole out real well. And I just run the drill bit up and down through the hole a couple times after it drills through, and that's how I do mine. So I'm going to drill all 4 of these out first, get my 4 holes. I'm not going to touch the cuff yet. I'll do that afterwards. So I'm going to walk over to the drill press and I'm going to drill this out real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, so now I have all 4 holes drilled out, and I've reamed them. Now they also make, when I travel on the road, I don't like bringing the drill press all the time. So they do make, Eurotool makes a hole punch that will punch through the metals. It'll work on titanium, but it wears out the bits really quick, the punching head. So, you know, if you have a drill press or a drill, I prefer to drill it out. It's just a lot cleaner. Also, when you punch it out, sometimes there's a little piece of a big nub of the metal doesn't come off. You gotta cut it off or pull it off. So if you, in your own studio, I recommend using a drill press or a flex shaft and drill out the holes. All right, so now that I have that, then I'm gonna take this guy here. I'm just gonna line it up really quickly. This is not a finished piece, so I'm just gonna line it up and mark 1 hole. Again, I'm just gonna mark 1 hole. I'm gonna take a fine point Sharpie, and I'm gonna stick the Sharpie through the copper that I drilled and mark the titanium piece. So now that I have a mark there, I'm gonna take my bracelet mandrel. I'm gonna slip it over. I'm gonna take my center punch and punch it right on the hole. And the reason why you're doing this is you don't want to get drift. You don't want the drill bit to drift on you. If you punch a little hole, it's not actually a hole, it's a little dimple. When you go to drill it out, it actually doesn't allow the drill bit to drift. So now I'm gonna go drill this hole out, and I'll be right back. Or if you have a hole punch, you can punch it out. But I'm gonna drill mine. All right, now that I've had the first hole drilled out on the titanium, I'm actually gonna line it up. And then I have some rivet heads that I've already pre-made. These rivet heads, it's a 16 gauge wire with a tiny head that I've melted a tiny ball on the tip of it. And it's very, very small. I just barely melt a small little head on that. And the reason why I do that is that when I slip this through, the head's gonna go on the inside of the cuff, and you want that head to be in there so that when you go to rivet it, it doesn't actually slide up farther than it needs to be, because when you start riveting, it'll actually push it up into the hole, and it won't have a good head on it. It won't be as sturdy and as big as you need that head to be. Also, what I do is that when I make these, so I have a whole bin that I've made. What I do is I'll pull one out, and when you cut these off the wire with your flush cutters, it makes a tiny little burr on the edge where you cut it. So you want that to slip through the hole easily, because it's the exact same size as the hole you drilled. So I take a file and I just gently file that burr off. I'm just getting that burr down so that it slips through the hole easy. The better you do this, the easier it's going to be to put the holes. especially if you're doing pieces that have multiple holes. You know, if you go 3 and above, then as you go through past through all those holes, you want that head to be actually pointy so it threads through all the holes easily. That should be enough there. So what I'll do is I'll pick up a rivet head, and then I'll slip it through the inside of the cuff. So there's, I don't know if you can see that. There's the first, it's right through the cuff. Then I'll take the second piece and I'll slip that through. Sometimes if I don't ream these out well enough, it's kind of a little tricky to get through. So again, the better you ream these out and the better you file it, the better off you're going to be. So it's sticking through a little bit. I'm just going to grab my pliers and pull it through the rest of the way. So I probably should have reamed it out a little bit better, but I just, once it comes through a little bit, I just grab it with some flat nose pliers and just pull it through. All right, so that's that. All right, let's see if I can get a better angle on this actual system. So now that the rivet head's pulled all the way through, you want to make sure it's all the way up. I'll stick it on this portion here, the fixture. Stick the ball right into, there's a little teeny dimple that's been ground out, and I stick the ball right in that dimple there. Push it down, make sure the rivets, I push it down a little bit so make sure the rivets all the way through the hole. And then I take a pair of flush cutters, and I'm going to cut this guy off about 1/16 of an inch off the copper. So there we go. And then all I do is take my riveting punch, place the punch right on top of the piece of wire, and just push down. And that first one is starting to lock it in. Now, I'll do it several times, but what you want to do is you want to give it a couple pumps and look at it. Pump and look at it. And there it is. Now there's the first one. Now I cut the head down a little bit short. I should have left it a little bit higher. What happens is if you're not careful, when you pump this guy, if your head's too short and you cut it down and you stick it on and start pumping it, if you pump it too many times or if it's too short, this portion of the riveting system, it'll compress the head too much and you'll actually make contact with this piece here, and it'll leave a little bit of a mar there. So the next one I'm gonna cut it a little bit higher and just get that head a little bit higher so I can pump it a couple more times before I actually make contact with the copper. So I'm going to line it up. I'm going to go back over to the drill press and I'm going to drill a couple more holes. Now you can either mark it like you did the first time, pull it aside, punch it, and then drill it, but I'm just going to hold it together like this and just drill straight through. And just put a hole through it. I'll be right back. There's my second hole. You never want to drill too many holes. You don't want to start drilling all 4 of them because you'll never get them to line up. So I do one first, rivet it, do a second one, cross corner, rivet that, and then once I have at least two rivets in there, locking in place. If I had another 10 rivet holes I had to do, I would do them all after that. But I'd always want to get 2 at least in there so it sets the piece in place and is positioned correctly. Once it's positioned correctly, then I can drill all the rest of the holes out and just start riveting, going crazy on it. So I'll grab another rivet head. Now this has already been filed. Hopefully, let's give it a little more file just to make it easier to go through. Line up the holes. Push it through. There it is. It's come through. So then I'll just set it on top of again, stick the head on top of the dimple on the riveter. Let's cut this one a little bit taller this time. And just give it a couple punches. And there it is. There's the second rivet. And there's the first one. Now I can go ahead and do the other 2. Now I can go inside and check these guys, and they're pretty smooth. I mean, they're rounded and smooth, and that's it. I mean, in the past, I mean, I was boom, 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 riveting, and it makes all kinds of sharp edges. Now I don't have any cleanup. Now, if you do have a little bit of a mar there on a piece, if you can get to it, if it's not patina or anything like that, you can actually go in there with a 3M wheel, a radial disc brush, and flex shaft, clean it up a little bit, get that little bit of that mar mark out of there if you wanted to. A lot of times, my pieces have so much stuff going on, texture-wise and layers, that those little teeny marks don't really matter. And if you really wanted to, I guess you can punch it a few more times and actually make it part of the design. So it would just be a ring. There'd be a ring around your actual rivet head, which would look kind of nice, you know, if you had a nice little circle around it. So I'll go ahead and do the other two, and I'll be right back. So got the last two holes drilled out. I'll just go ahead and grab a rivet rivet has the head on it and has been filed, went through very easily. Stick it back on the stinger, cut off about a 1/16, I'm sorry, 1/8 of an inch. No, I'm sorry, I was right the first time. 1/16 of an inch. I should have practiced this. Normally I don't, it was never a measurement for me. I would just eyeball it and cut it off. So right before the video, I kind of looked at my ruler and was like, what? How long are these things? Okay. So then stick it on there and just give it a little punch, punch, punch. Look at it, it's getting there. A couple more. There it is. And then I'll do the last one. Stick it on the riveting system, stinger, cut it off. I'll just go back over these guys and give them, that one's good. This one needs one more punch, I think. There it is. Simple as that. All right, so now in theory I can add all kinds of more rivets to this if I wanted to. This piece here has multiple rivet heads all along here that they're not doing anything. They're just there for design. So these aren't holding anything, so I just added those for design there. They're pretty clean. I don't have to clean this up at all. I mean, there's the first one I did mar a little bit, and it'll just take practice. The first few times you may mar it more than you wish, but you'll get the hang of the length that you'll need to cut off right before you start punching it. You don't want it too tall. If you go too tall, it'll actually start to bend over as opposed to mushrooming out. You want the head to mushroom out. But if you have it too tall, it's just going to bend it over. So you take a little bit of getting the hang of how tall you need that head to be. It's like, again, it's about a 1/16, maybe a tad bit more than a 1/16, not quite an 1/8, but a little more than that. Also, on these systems, the center punch sometimes, if you get it, these are new and they haven't been broken in yet. I did try every one of them out. Some of them are a little sticky. I tried to wear them in, but you'll find that over time as you use it, they'll actually work better and better. If you get it and it doesn't actually pop when you push down on it, just put it on a piece of wood or something and just pop it a bunch of times. Just keep snapping it, snapping it, snapping it. So if you're riveting and it doesn't work right away, like you push down, it doesn't pop, take it off the actual rivet head, put it on a piece of wood and just push on it a few times, and then it should work. Usually when I have them new like this, sometimes it won't snap all the way, and I just go there and just give it a quick pop till it does, and then start riveting again. But you'll find that they'll break in. Also, there's a screw back here. This portion back here unscrews. If you find that you have trouble snapping it, try fiddling with this screw right here, unscrewing a little bit at a time try it until it pops. Some of them they just need to be adjusted a little bit as they break in. So this whole portion back here unscrews. So just unscrew that. Don't unscrew this top portion here though. This top portion unscrews also. Don't unscrew that one. Just unscrew the back portion of it. And it just may take a little bit of fine tuning to actually get it to work correctly all the time. It doesn't take a whole lot of force. I'm doing it sitting down. If you're smaller or you're not as strong as I am, you can always stand up and do it and use your body weight to push down on it. Boom, boom, boom. And it should work pretty fine, pretty good. Included with the system will be 2 screws that you can just go ahead and screw into a bench somewhere or a piece of wood, and then clamp that piece of wood down. I do recommend you pre-drilling before you put these screws through. That way you don't crack your bench or crack the wood. And the bit that you want to use has to be just be smaller than the actual screw itself. You're just trying to get rid of some of the material of the wood so that when you screw through, there's not as much wood there, material mass, that you snap the actual bench. Just a small drill bit will work. Even the drill bit, the size 1.3 millimeters, probably a good size to use. Just take this drill a little bit away. All right. Now I'll show you how I make my heads. This is something you want to learn. I make all of my own rivet heads. I'll try to include some rivet heads in the packages so you can see the size of it and how they work. But I do recommend learning how to make your own rivet heads. I don't know how much time I'll have in the future to make rivet heads and sell them. I'll try to have some for purchase in the future. It takes a lot of time to make these guys for me in quantity. I'm just one man doing this, so I'll show you briefly how I make them. I use a Smith little torch with a number 5 tip. You want to have this. You want to use a real small flame and a real tight little flame because it happens really fast. If you use like a bigger torch, like an acetylene torch with a big tip on it, that flame's so big it's just gonna melt the whole thing. It's not gonna melt just a head. The little blazer is not quite powerful enough either. It's usually a Smith torch with a real small tip, and I'll show you quickly how I do that. So I've already pre-cut some pieces here. I have some little pieces. These are. Let's see how big these guys are. They're about 3/8. Again, you can cut them longer if you want. I try not to waste so much because I've just made hundreds of them. So I'll take my Smith torch. This is Oxy. I use oxygen propane. Number 5 tip. I'll get a real tight flame on it. You can see that there. I'll try to put this up so you can see it better. Real tight little flame. And then I'll pick up one of the pieces of wire with some tweezers. Hold it at the very end as far as I can up to the top. And then I just put it right in that flame for a couple seconds. Boom, there it is. It's just a couple little passes. And I found that if you find that you're melting the heads too big, it happens really quick. Don't just hold it in there. I was trying to hold it in there and count, I think it was 2 seconds in the past, but as I made these hundreds yesterday, I found that if you pass it back and forth in front of the flame, right at the tip right there, the secondary blue flame, about the 3rd or 4th pass is when it'll actually form. There it is. And it's a little easier to control because you're going right past it, and as opposed to holding it, you hold there for a split second longer, it's going to be too big of a head. There it is, tiny little head. And that's it. Again, I'll try to include some of these rivets in your packages if you purchase a Stinger riveting system from me. But again, it's if you do a lot of riveting like I do a lot of rivets. I mean, I don't even know, I can't even say how many rivets I've done, but I've done quite a bit. I mean, all these guys have have rivets all over them. You know, they're just riveted to the nines. This one's got, I don't even know, it's got like 10 rivets. This one here has got probably 30 rivets on it. So I do a lot of riveting. So if you're doing a lot of riveting like I am, I'd recommend trying to make your own. And you know, you can buy a Smith torch, and you know, they make Smith with a disposable tanks. You don't have to store big, you know, tanks in your studio. They have little disposable oxygen propane tanks you can buy from the hardware store. Rio sells that setup, and they're preset regulators that you can buy that go with it. You can also get those from Rio Grande. And I have a couple. I have quite a few of these now. I think I have maybe 4 or 5 in my studio. And some of the ones I bought were knockoffs. I got them off Amazon or eBay or something, and they're not very expensive. And they work just as well. They're not as good as a Smith. A Smith is a little easier to deal with. It tunes better. But the knockoff ones, they work well enough, and you know, they're the same tips, so you can get a real tight little flame on it. I don't think you're going to be able to get the head size that you need, that as small as you need to be with a large torch, one of those big heads. So I'll show you an example of what that torch looks like. So if you're using any of these guys, you know, or bigger, there's some big ones out there, you know, some people use. Here's the smallest one I have here. This is also a Smith, but it's large. Never even used these. These were a trade I got recently. So that's the number 1 tip. This is a 0. And this is the double 0. I think the double 0 is even too big. You can give it a shot. Maybe with practice, you can get it to work. But you need that head to be very small. You can try to rivet it, and I've done it without a head. You know, just put the wire through it and start setting it. But just be careful. It will work, but that inside head, which is formed by this one here, it won't be as large as I like them to be. What'll happen is it'll form a little bit, but it'll start pushing up before it actually forms a good dome on it, a good head, and it won't allow it to be as large as I like. I like a little bit of a bigger head, so I know it's on there. But with some practice, you can actually get it to work. I've done it a couple times, and this system works fine on flat pieces too. So if you're doing pendants, things like that, the same process. Just stick it on there and rivet it. Boom, boom, boom. It's a great system. It's saved me so much time. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to contact me. When you first get it, just go ahead and mount it, and make sure you mount it firmly. Because you're pushing down this thing. You don't want these screws to pop out. So don't blow out your workbench, crack it or split it, and don't use too big of a drill bit if you're pre-drilling. If you use too big of a drill bit, your threads aren't going to grab enough of the wood, and then it could come loose. So make sure it's mounted well. And again, if you have any questions about the system, it'll take a little bit of practice to get the heads to be perfect. But once you learn how to use the system correctly and figure out the little nuances of it, it's so fast. Believe me, I do a lot of rivets, and this is a game changer. It's so fast once you get the hang of it. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to contact me if you like, and thank you.